welcome back to another Footy Thoughts recording. I'm Joey.
I'm Casey.
We are recording this as of August 15th on a Tuesday. Pretty big, pretty exciting first week of the Premier League. A lot of things to talk about, as well as a lot of things kind of going on throughout this week and towards the end of the month as well. We're going to start out talking about some big transfer news that has kind of gone down. Basically, besides the big one outside of the competition with Neymar going to Al Hilal, we've got Moises Caicedo and Lavia making their moves to Chelsea. Of course, Caicedo going for, I think, 115 mil. I'm not quite sure what Lavia is going for. I don't understand how. I mean, I know how because they sold a bunch of players, but I don't know how Chelsea's doing this.
I don't know. I bet we see it. I bet we see a classic athletic article that comes out in the coming weeks where it's like, this is how Chelsea was able to blank, or Chelsea misrepresenting finances and being looked at, because this doesn't make sense. This truly doesn't make sense. I don't understand. Well, and it would be different if I saw a bunch of one year loan with obligation to buyers. That's how franchises and teams delay FFP. Any sort of rulings in that way, or any sort of rules they need to follow, they delay it by signing the player on loan and then having an obligation to buy, because it kind of, there's numbers that reset obviously every year. So I don't know. I think we see a really spicy article come out from a journalist here pretty soon on how Chelsea's doing this, because it doesn't make sense.
I don't disagree with an article coming out, but on paper, I technically do know. It's more like I don't know how they're getting away with it, but they're giving these guys 7-8 year contracts, and technically on the books, it's going to be 15 mil a year, 20 mil a year, rather than all of that bulk up front. It's kind of that Todd Bowley American sports kind of twist to it, rather than the classic kind of European contract you're used to seeing. But them getting these two guys across the line, now granted, Moises Caicedo, everyone recently learned with Chelsea's announcement video is that he is, of course, a diehard Chelsea fan. He's got this amazing photo with his presumably mom sitting in the back of the car. It's actually a pretty great announcement, if you ask me. And now we haven't seen Lavia in a jersey, but we have gotten the here we go from Fab, so it's basically all done.
Yeah.
I was saying very early preseason that to go from Chelsea to Liverpool is that Liverpool need more defensive mids. You need a better midfield than what they had going into. Now they had Caicedo, or so they had McAllister, and they had Szoboszlai.
Szoboszlai. You're close.
I'm saying it my way.
Just
so
say
Sabo. For them not to get these two guys, it really continues or it almost emphasizes my question marks around what their midfield is going to look like. And I think even they didn't get denied by Tyler Adams, and this is me reaching, but Tyler Adams agreed personal terms with Bournemouth over the weekend, I believe. I don't even know if Liverpool reached out and tried to get contact him, but that just shows kind of what pool Liverpool is dealing with.
Yeah.
Moving on to some loans, we have Jack Harrison. Some more drama this weekend. Officially joining Everton.
That's fucking funny.
I mean, you can take this one as the in-house Evertonian.
Yeah, I mean, it was really funny. It was kind of a feud between Everton Tier 1's Paul Joyce and the Bobble. Mostly Paul Joyce, if I remember correctly. Maybe there was somebody else that was stepping in that's not in tune with Everton. But Fab was jumping the gun too much on this transfer, and he was saying that Jack Harrison was here we go to Everton and all this kind of stuff, or that he rejected Everton to go to Villa. And then he sent out that really funny tweet. It's like, once Villa realized that Jack Harrison is injured, they decided to pull back. But Paul Joyce, I believe, was the one who was Everton Tier 1, was saying, yo, Fab, that's not correct. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, it was entertaining at the very least. But, Harrison on loan. I mean, as many attackers as we can get, I guess. Whatever. So.
But he's going to be more of a winger, I would assume. But is that because Dwight McNeil's out for so long, you think? Or is it someone else?
Anyone who can create or score a goal to get the points for the team is probably okay in our squad at this point.
That's big if true. That's honestly some great analysis by you right there.
God damn.
Another name that I will struggle with, Zaniolo, the once young Italian prodigy, has joined Villa on loan. I believe from Turkey, from Galatasaray, I think. He's was supposed to be, I think even a few years ago, touted to be one of the best young Italian products coming out for their league. I forget how many ACL injuries he's had, if it's like even meniscus, but he's had two terrible major leg injuries that kind of really stunted his kind of career path and growth. We're just kind of seeing him fall out at Roma and make that move to Turkey. So good to see him in the Prem. Some permanent moves. We have James Ward-Prowse to West Ham. We have some Kudus, Mohamed Kudus from Ajax rumors kind of catching a little bit of, I don't want to say traffic because there still isn't a here we go yet, but we saw him getting linked to Brighton and then now with West Ham. And then a big one, which is kind of going to lead into the KDB injury news, but City going after Lucas Paqueta too from West Ham. Put in a bid in for about 80 million here or there. I believe it was immediately denied. I don't think West Ham are going to get a better price than that. Paqueta is their club record signing for, I believe, 42 million. But you can't sell all your best players and expect to stay up. So I think they're going to keep a firm stance
right now. Yeah, you can't do that if you're West Ham.
Keep a pretty firm stance here on that. I mentioned Neymar, but do you think of any other transfers you want to talk about before we talk about injuries?
Not notably, no. They're still under the hood with Willie Noto from Leeds over to Everton, but I don't think that will happen, unfortunately. But no, I don't think so.
All right, so we'll quickly cover some injuries then before we move on from our Game Week 1 review. Like I said earlier, the KDB injury, I really didn't understand why Pep played him, especially with him coming off that injury all summer, then him playing only a substitute appearance against Arsenal in the Community Shield. But he maybe lasted, 25, 30 minutes in that game, non-contact, maybe even stretched out a little too far, but re-injured his hamstring. Pep already said he's out for 3 to 4 months. It's not ideal for, one, your best player to be out with constant injury-prone history, and also, too, he's 32 years old, so who knows how efficient he'll be when he comes back. We had another terrible injury in Tyrone Mings. I didn't watch this one, but from Twitter I heard it was a buckling when he landed or something like that, and immediately on the ground, play stopped. Everyone came around him in support. It was terrible to see. And then we've got Reece James, who got subbed off injured. However, I think it was just precautionary. I believe Poch in the press said that he was just tired and needed a sub.
Okay.
So, we've seen plenty of managers kind of cover or try and hide a player's injury because who knows, like in practice this week he may tweak it again or pull something, like who knows, he's made out of glass. But according to Poch, he was only tired. Nothing to worry about. Besides that, I mean, there's and Timber for Arsenal.
I didn't see this injury.
So he was backpedaling on some sort of play, and it was another non-contact injury. Not as bad as Mings as a visual, kind of on the field, like in the pain, but I don't think there's any confirmation on how bad it is. But it's another suspected serious knee injury, so that's pretty tough on Arsenal to start the season because again, it's another big signing that they made. He can play both sides of the field in that inverted fullback position, so it'll be interesting to see if he slides Tomiyasu in, who's very much a defensive player, or if Ben White kind of takes over that role as well, and how they adapt there. Yeah. All right, so that is a good amount of transfer news as well as injuries. We will move on over to kind of a quick Game Week 1 review. We had a lot of surprising, not so surprising results. We had Newcastle and Brighton kind of leading the way in terms of XG. Was there anything that surprised you with Newcastle and or Brighton?
Surprised me. Two words. Tonali.
Mater.
Not necessarily that it was super surprising that a world-class player could have that kind of performance on his Premier League debut, but my God, was he fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, if you didn't catch that game, Newcastle at home to Villa, I mean, Sandro Tonali was on another level than the entire field. Entire field. Like, he was Pirlo 2.0, but in like above Pirlo type of way. Yeah, that's the kind of claim I'm making to it. Like, it was unbelievable. In the Brighton game, I don't think there wasn't. This was a classic Brighton having a really deep, exciting young attack. Matoma looked awesome. He was saucing players up every which way. I will say, from an FPL perspective, Estupinian, I know that he is one of the highest owned defenders in the game, but he looked very, very much so worth it. Like, it's one of
I
those
thought you were going to
players
go the
where,
worthless route. The way you were
oh
framing
no,
that sentence, I was ready for like, are
absolutely.
you
I
kidding
mean,
me?
no, I mean, to be fair, it's at home to Luton, so they were kind of parking the bus a little bit. They were playing a lot deeper, and he got a lot of chances. But Estupinian was inside of the box, getting shots on target, getting key passes inside the box. Like, he was one of their best attackers. He had 6 chances created, 2 big chances created, and 3 shots, 2 of them on target. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
those are stats of a left back that you want and need. So it's just, a lot of people were like, oh, I'm fading Brighton's defense. They're not going to be as good without Caicedo. And I was actually saying that for a while, too. It's understandable. But at the same, I mean, from a purely attacking perspective, you got to have a Stupinian on your team. So that was another good surprise. Yeah, I think those are the only 2 big ones out of those 2 games.
My big takeaway from these two teams is they went and got their transfers done early in the window. They got
Yeah.
replacements in, they got reinforcements, and you saw them each team sub in 3+ attackers, quality attackers, fresh legs,
Yep.
60th, 70th minute. Now, I'm not going to put too much into Newcastle scoring 5 goals. I totally think that will happen again to a lesser opponent. I just think that Ming's injury killed Villa. And of course, they
Yeah.
wanted to do a high pressing line. And when you lose your captain to potentially, most likely, a season ending injury, it will kill morale. I don't care what quality defender you have coming in, there will be an adjustment period. So I just think that was kind of a gift that fell on Newcastle lap. It allowed them to sub out early, get Callum Wilson in, get the Leicester winger, Harvey Barnes in, get players like that, get them
Mhm.
minutes, and get some confidence for them.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that was a
I
little bit of
do
a fluke. I agree.
I
I
agree,
think it
yeah.
was. I don't.
But I think they are capable of doing that again. I just
Of
don't think it's
course,
going to be against a
they did it
side like
versus
Villa.
Tottenham, but Tottenham
Hey, whoa,
sucks.
whoa,
So,
whoa, 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 whoa! Not,
oh,
not necessary.
oh,
Not necessary. Whole different
oh,
scheme, whole
oh.
different style of play here. I wanted to touch on the Salah early sub. Um, Me being a truther of certain takes, I personally loved seeing his little tantrum there.
I
Now I know
did. I loved it too.
each rip of the tape he threw on the ground, and the fans went, "Whoa!" And then he threw another piece out, and the fans went, "Oh!" Just like, fucking grow up. You had 75 minutes to do something. Maybe he's secretly upset with Klopp's new tactics or this new system where he's playing out wide. He had a pretty eventful first half, so I won't say it's the tactics. He had so much space when they would flood the left side, and they would late swing it over to Salah, and he would have a one-on-one with Levi Colwell, I believe. But I thought a little prima donna. I think he dapped out the sub player, but didn't talk to Klopp. But baby
Nah, he's
stuff,
pissed. It's
baby
going to be
stuff.
interesting. It's going to be interesting seeing what comes out of that. He's going to start next game. He's going to start versus Bournemouth and everything like that. But if there were one manager in the league that would pull some fucking whack ass shit and be like, "Nah, you're not starting, Saul. I don't care how big you are. I don't care how big of a franchise face you are for this." It's Klopp. I mean,
Yep.
the fucking madman German himself would be the one to do that. So, I mean, that would be. I would laugh so hard if the Liverpool lineup comes out and Salah's not starting and half the fucking league around the planet captains him. Oh
Yeah,
man.
we'll talk about it during FBO, but yes, that would be the best thing ever. And this is Casey or Joey and I. Oh my God, This is Casey and I being too nerdy, but they play Bournemouth at home, and the kind of performance Bournemouth put in against West Ham is unlike any Bournemouth performance. They had possession. They played a high pressing, counterattacking, or they played a high press to the counterattack, something very different rather than sitting back now. Last year, Liverpool won 9-0 against Bournemouth. Very obviously two different teams on both sides of the field. However, I expect a Liverpool win, a comfortable win at home, but it's not going to be, I think, a routine rout. If there is a middle between a routine or a win and a routine kind of blowout. So I think that's going to be something to look out for in week 2. And then to kind of wrap it up, talking about week 1, I told you so, but the Onana no penalty call at the very end. With a few people, especially on Twitter, specifically United fans, very on the fence if it was a call or not, how goalies have different sort of rules to play by. I mean, they removed the refereeing crew from the game for this upcoming weekend. They immediately apologized after the game, saying they got the call wrong. Wolves manager Gary O'Neill, well, Wolves in general don't get the points, and then the manager gets a yellow card, and of course they can't rescind the yellow card. And on top of that, managers went down from 4 to 3 yellow cards before they have a suspension. So now he's only playing with 2. Granted, I guess managers should not get yellow cards, but there's just a domino effect from this blatant no call that happened. Yeah. What do you think?
I sent a text in our big FPL group text, and I was kind of defending it a little bit because when I didn't watch it live. I missed it live, and when I watched it back again, my initial instinct. And for those of you who don't know, I've been a field player my whole life. I played center back, but over the last 3 years, I permanently moved to goalie in 2 different indoor teams and 1 outdoor team here in Austin, Texas, and it's been interesting playing goalie. I've learned a lot. I've understood why they're protected. I watched this back, and I was like, okay, that's a pen. I probably would have called that as a pen. But I was also like, y'all need to chill because that's a lot more gray area than people think. I think the first and foremost is that was a 50-50 between a goalkeeper and a player. And they were both looking at the ball. It's not like Onana went in and was like, oh shit, I'm not going to catch this, and then looked at the player and like intentionally just threw his momentum into him. Onana was looking at the ball the whole time. That's my first thought on this. Secondly, the ball hit. Who's the player?
You're asking the wrong person to pronounce it. It's their tall 6'5" striker.
Oh, okay. Well, the ball hit his head, and then Onana's momentum took him into each other. So the ball hit his head, and then they clashed. That did not affect the ball trajectory whatsoever. That is a big part in what is called a foul or a penalty in the rule book. Is does it affect the play? Does it affect the trajectory of the ball? Does it affect the trajectory of the player who's about to get maybe another chance? None of that was the case. So it was a 50-50, both players looking at the ball, and it was a clash at the end of the play. The play had already basically ended. Again, I probably would have called it a pen. I'm not saying it's not a penalty. I just want to make that clear. But I need people to understand that it's not as like game's gone type of deal that you guys think it might be. Anyways, want to put that out there.
When I was watching it, I definitely had an agenda because I had a firm stance against Onana. I'm not a big fan of him. I don't think he's worth the price tag he got to go to United. But like we talked about, like we mentioned earlier, that even the gray area as well as that. Like any sort of challenge like that outside of the 18-yard box is called a foul on the field, whether you're looking at the ball, because you get players who go up and jump on their cleats in the air and they hit the player in the midsection. That's a yellow card. It's the reckless play. I agree the goalies are ruled by a different kind of point of view. I agree there was a 50-50, but like in terms of like, oh, this is a really close call, or holy shit, that's blatant as can be. Like, you're definitely leaning that blatant side rather than, like, the questionable. And I think it shows with how I forget what the acronym stands for, but like the refereeing body of European or English soccer immediately apologized for it afterwards. So,
sure,
interesting to see how that plays out, how kind of VAR as a whole, because there was a few questionable no calls, the penalty call against Son in the Tottenham game, and then even Tottenham's goalie Vicario kind of took out one of Brentford's attackers. I can't remember who it was, but I know there was a handful of calls that happened this week in that. Week one not off to a great start for VAR. So we'll see how that goes for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So those were our kind of quick takeaways review of game week 1. We will move on to our preview of week 2. We have another Friday game. It'll be Forest against Sheffield at 1:45. Unless you're American, I don't think you will be. I guess that is a big pull, but you won't be caring too much for this game simply because of Matt Turner. And then come Saturday, there is no 6:30 kickoff. You have Fulham Brentford at 9, starting at 9. Liverpool against Bournemouth. Luton Town Burnley is postponed due to Luton not having their stadium up to standards, or I think even done with their remodeling. Something along those lines. The game is postponed. Wolves versus Brighton. 2 huge games in Tottenham United at 11:30. And then City Newcastle at 2 p.m. 2 big games on Saturday. On Sunday, 8 a.m., you have Villa against Everton, West Ham against Chelsea, and then Monday we have Palace against Arsenal to wrap up the game week 2 games. Now, we really want to focus on these 2 big games on Saturday, starting with Tottenham against United. Big Ange had a quote in the media, this may have been in the preseason, but it is kind of surfaced as of now, is that he said that our team will hit turbulence. He's never had success or, the success he's finished teams with when he leaves. He doesn't have that success immediately. It takes time to get there. The optimist in me wants this to be a win for Tottenham. Hell, even a close game, but I can still see this being... I guess he's being a 3-3 within the first, or I wouldn't say the first half because I don't expect Tottenham to match United, even with how United played against Wolves. But I expect there to be goals in this game. What about you?
No, I'm right there with you. There's goals in this game for sure. We've been saying all preseason, Tottenham overs are going to be a lock with this new style that they're playing. I personally feel that United is going to expose Tottenham. Tottenham is going to try to play their possession game, and they're going to pass. They're going to zip the ball around really well. I think that's going to happen. But I think United on the counter, they're going to score an early goal, I think, and Tottenham's just going to keep playing that high line, high possession type of game. Like Ange said, I don't care if we are losing or winning 5-4. I like that better than 0-0 draws or whatever his quote was. That's what I see happening in this game. And Man United, I think, is going to be lethal on the counterattack.
It's going to be very similar based on how Brentford played against us. Granted, they were at home and played this way. I think with United being on the road, it's going to be not okay because you can play tactically however you want to, but I think it's going to be more accepted for United to wait, and then just counter with Marcus Rashford. Granted, we finally have pace with our center backs. Hopefully, Romero was actually subbed off with a concussion suspected. He put on Instagram that he's totally fine now. But that's someone who, he's not as fast as Rashford, but it's someone he can kind of keep up with.
He's not going to be to bad.
But he's not, like, if it's a race, I expect Rashford to win, but he's not going to be left behind, like not able to, tug his shirt or kind of keep.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think United are a better team. Brentford had some chances that they left out there in the first half on those counters, and Buemo missed an absolute sitter. I don't think United is going to squander their opportunities, and I do think we see a formation change. Exactly. I don't think we see a formation change, but I think we see a change of personnel. We saw some Jadon Sancho at the 9 in preseason. Would not surprise me if he starts there and Rashford goes out to the wing, because there were plenty of opportunities in the first half where the ball got hit out to Garnacho, not necessarily on the counter, but he had so much space one-on-one, and really kind of maybe did a little body feint here and there, but then pass it back to the top of the box. So I think Rashford, if he starts out there, will be a lot more of a threat and a lot more of a danger to Tottenham. But regardless, I mean, this game's going to be fun to watch. And then moving on to the Newcastle City game, like that's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think it's a comfortable win for City, just because of how we talked about with Newcastle, how they did score 5 against Villa, but it was a little bit fluky. While I quickly look, their head-to-head last year, they had a 3-3 at the beginning of the season last year, and then the last home game, City won 2-0, which is what I expect, something very, very similar.
Yeah, I think it's going to be methodical. I think Newcastle is at the status now where they're like, we are Champions League quality year in, year out, and they're going to play like it when they go up in these huge, huge fixtures away to City. They're going to play like it. They're not going to take a ton of risks. They're not going to be like, oh, if we just throw our players and attack and get that first goal, we'll win this game. Like, that's not the idea here, and they know that. So it's going to be a very methodical. Both teams are going to try to keep possession as much as they can. It's going to be pretty slow unless someone gets that, like, really threatening, single run and the best player on the field to be able to score and make a difference in that kind of specific game where it's slow, methodical, quality all over the pitch, Erling Haaland. So I do think Haaland scores at least one goal, which is not a hot take whatsoever. But that's what I think is going to happen. It's going to be slow, quality soccer, and Haaland's going to be the one to tip the turn.
With that KDB injury, I'm really looking forward to Alvarez finally getting consistent minutes and finding a place for him in the starting 11. And I'll touch
FPL
on that.
Player outlook. FPL player outlook on that, yeah.
I'll touch on that later. But the last game we'll talk about before we move on and finish up with some FPL and betting, the Wolves-Brighton game. What did you want to discuss about?
Yeah. I really wanted to talk about this game after watching Wolves against United. So just as a little background for people who didn't know what happened here. So Wolves fired their coach, I can't remember when, but towards the end of last season, I'm pretty sure, or in the summer. Or was it more recent than that? Maybe it was more recent.
Dude, it was like the game. It was the day before the season started. Or maybe a week before the season started, then Gary came in.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about Wolves right now because they fired their coach, and then they hired Gary O'Neill, which is ex-Bournemouth, who's had a lot of success staying up in the Premier League with his Bournemouth squad playing a 4-1-4-1, 4-4-2, Sean Dyche type of counter-attacking soccer. Bournemouth were always kind of average at doing that. Now, Gary O'Neill goes to Wolves, and I actually think this was an incredible big brain 4D chess type of move from Wolves because basically Wolves are in the position where they're not going to be able to be that possession-keeping dominant force against any team in the PL. But you get someone like Gary O'Neill who has a philosophy that he executed decently well at Bournemouth, and he brings that to Wolves. And essentially what you have is Gary O'Neill having a little bit of success with Bournemouth, keeping them up in the Premier League, moving to Wolves, and immediately getting this much of an upgrade in squad quality. Wolves, in terms of the players that they have and the quality and their value and what they bring to the table, leaps years ahead than Bournemouth. And if these players buy into this Gary O'Neill system, I witnessed this. I witnessed this yesterday, and you know what I said before yesterday? Wolves are getting relegated, and they're fucked. That's what I was saying. Then I watched them play yesterday. They were good in this system. They were very good in this system. So this leads me back into Wolves versus Brighton. I think it's a very interesting game because I want to see Wolves play at home. I think Wolves are going to go back and they're going to say, we got screwed. We were better than United. That's what they're thinking in their heads. And you know what? That's kind of the truth. They looked better.
XG-wise, they were better
Than United. They were the better team. So they're going to take that back and go back home, and they're going to play Brighton, who Brighton has some very interesting statistics on the road last season. They're obviously a very high-quality squad that scores a lot of goals. Their road stats are very interesting. They score a lot of goals. They concede a shit ton of goals on the road. I can't remember the exact stat, but last season there were a ton of goals that were conceded by Brighton on the road, kept a lot of clean sheets at home. So this is going to be a very exciting game, in my opinion. So it's just something I wanted to key in on, and I will be tuning into this one as like my main 9 a.m. game to tune in on Saturday, because I think it's going to be very back and forth and a really good fight.
All right. So that was our preview of week 2. To wrap it up, we will just quickly discuss about FPL. I know we've kind of jumped in here or there throughout the episode so far, but a great takeaway by you was that Wolves performance, as well as Brighton and Newcastle being so attacking. A big takeaway from me, the KDB injury. Alvarez, like we just mentioned, is a big, not immediate plug and play. They do have some fixtures coming up, but I do just want to watch one more time, because I think it's, after 1 week, it's still way too early to be taking hits. Granted, if you have an injury, sure, or like a long-term injury, sure, transfer them out. But like me personally, with my team, I finished with 73 points this week. I started 5 midfielders. I got 1 return from my midfielders, which is just classic, like my FPL in a nutshell. But I don't plan on transferring anyone out. I'm going to trust my gut. I'm going to continue to play my 2 United and 2 Arsenal midfielders for these first 3 games, and then look to pivot elsewhere. I'm glad I stashed Chilwell as well. I'm looking forward to playing him next week over Luke Shaw. What about you?
Yeah, I want to echo that Julian Alvarez pick. He was very involved, very, very involved. I already used my transfer, and I kind of regret it. It's just because I had a shit week. I had an absolute shit week. I can't remember my points, but everything was going wrong for me last week. I did Richie to Madison. I mean, I watched that Tottenham game. I ended up with 71 points, but I also bench boosted. So I had Richie on my bench with 2, Estupinian with 7, Bayer with 1, and Turner with 2. So not necessarily a successful bench boost by any means, but whatever, we'll take it. So I kind of emotionally did Richie to Madison, because I had switched that right before the game week started on Friday. I went Madison to Richie. So anyways, I was just emotional about that. I still think it's a good transfer, but I will be looking to bring Chilwell. I will be looking to bring in Chilwell for sure. He was heavily involved in Chelsea. Definitely ears perked for Chilwell. You know what? I want to talk about Villa for a little bit from an FPL perspective, because I harped on Moussa Diaby as one of my favorite players. They looked good. I think that was a little bit of a hiccup. It was a little bit of kind of a, Newcastle just was absolutely quality. Moussa Diaby looked really good, guys. He looked very, very good. He also had a great goal. If you haven't watched that highlight, it's an excellent goal. Ollie Watkins was heavily involved as well. I even with this Mings injury, luckily they're now deep at the center back position, and I don't think it's going to affect them too much. But Villa's still going to be really good. Don't take this game as some knee-jerk, Villa's, not close to being good. They're still going to be very good. And they just signed Zaniolo on loan. I didn't even know about that until I saw it in the little notepad. That's a great signing. I would say my advice here is to not knee-jerk away from Villa and write them off after a 5-1 loss to Newcastle. They're still going to be a very good team.
And I made this mistake last year. I actually started with Rashford last year, and if you remember, in week 2 they got clapped by Brentford 4-0. So I transferred him out because I was afraid of a freaking price rise. It was just so stupid so early in the season. And he went on to score I think 10 the next game, 7, and then 9, and just absolutely burned me. So it's too early to be worrying about prices. It's too early to be giving up on good players. Now, if you want to give up on some 5-point, not João Pedro, who personally so happy he got a return. He could have gotten so much more. But if you've got some random 5.5 player in, sure, you can give up on him. But it's these guys that you've trusted all summer to keep in your lineup, and go into the game week 1 with, give them more than 1 week. Now,
Yeah.
guys you should definitely not knee-jerk on are players like Rodri from City. I don't say you shouldn't, because this KDB injury is so new. He could still have a attacking role, but the concept of having 3 City assets, you definitely don't want him to block your route to a Foden and Alvarez, especially if you already have a City defender in your lineup. All right.
I agree
so
with that.
Besides,
Rodri is the key knee jerk player.
and then even with like Harvey Barnes, like, and this is more of a takeaway from game week 1 as well as part of FPL. We had 5 subs last year. I think this year we're going to see FPL change in a little bit of, you don't need a player to get 90 minutes. Yes, that is fantastic. That's more chances, more time for them to score or assist or do whatever, get a red card. But like Harvey Barnes is going to consistently get 30, 40 minutes a game, especially with the extended stoppage time. Now, obviously, that's not ideal, but it wouldn't surprise me if in the first 5 weeks he has double-digit returns twice, maybe 3 times, but he has 1 start. So I think it's going to change the way that people view FPL and people view must-own assets, because when you used to look at a player, oh, they get 90 minutes, oh, they're on pens, oh, they take corners, like, oh, this guy gets consistent 40 minutes against tired legs on a very, very good attack.
Yeah.
That could become an asset. That's just something to think about. I'm not bringing Harvey Barnes in. If I'm bringing anyone in, it's Isak. Besides that, I think it's going to be something to think about moving on with the season.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so that was our FPL recap, kind of our takeaways and plans for game week 2. Besides Richarlison to Madison, are you just staying with that and then rolling with? Well, I guess really quick. I mean, I'm going to captain Hall again. Do you have a different captain pick you're going to do this week?
No, I probably won't make that mistake again. I captained Rashford, so got a headache.
Learned your lesson. All right, so to wrap it up, we will talk about our bets and the recap of the lock of the week. I currently 1-0 on the season. I had Tottenham Brentford over 2.5, which cashed in the first half. Very happy to get that one over with, especially because there were 0 goals in the second half. But we mentioned earlier in the show that Tottenham overs is going to be a very consistent theme in the future. How about you?
Yeah, not a great start. Went 0-1. By the way, I would like to make it clear, I went on, I think, a 7-0 run last season with my locks. So I'm pretty sure I ended the season undefeated with like 8-0 or something like that. But we didn't keep track as well as we should have. But I'm starting off this season 0-1. Man United -1.5 did not work out. That was disappointing. Wolves were fucking good out of nowhere, so that's great. And my lock this week is going to be over 2.5 in Wolves Brighton. I think it's going to be a really fun game. Statistically, Wolves have conceded, and both teams have scored all last season when they're playing away games. They got basically 75 to 80% of their clean sheets at home. So I think it's going to be based on how Wolves looked yesterday. I think it's going to be a very fun game, and I expect goals.
All right, very nice. My lock of the week is going to be Crystal Palace +1 against Arsenal. I'm taking the home dog here. Casey and I have this very firm stance of if Vegas ever gives us a +1 home dog, you have to take it. On top of that, Crystal Palace looked very good away against Sheffield. Now we know Sheffield is a newly promoted team, didn't attack very well, but that is a home opener for a newly promoted team. As big or small as the stadium was, it was a sort of hostile environment, and they went in and got it done 1-0. Arsenal, on the other hand, at home, didn't generate a bunch of good chances. They had a Saka worldie. He's fully capable of scoring multiple of those this season, but I like Crystal Palace at home. I don't think they keep a clean sheet by any means, but I can see this being a draw, if not, only losing by 1 and getting my bet pushed.
Yep, like it.
All right, so those were our bets for game week 2, our lock of the weeks. But with that is the end of this episode for Footy Thoughts Week 2. I'm Joey.
Casey.
Probably going. Oh, I gotta get good at this. Please follow us on social media. We're at some sort of at Footy Thoughts on Instagram. We're on TikTok. Not Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. Yeah, we're not there yet. We're on Spotify as well. Please give us a follow. Please comment future questions for a video. Please comment how you hate our bets. Please comment a bet you think we should take. But besides that, that was Footy Thoughts Week 2. Thank you for watching or listening.
Peace.
There we go. All right.